Welcome to Green and Red, Scrappy Politics for Scrappy People, a regular podcast on radical environmental and anti-capitalist politics, brought to you by Bob Bazanko and Scott Parkin.
Welcome to the silky smooth sounds of the Green and Red podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Parkin, in Berkeley, California today. And as always, I am joined by...
It's Bob Bazanko in Houston today.
Yeah. And today we're going to be talking about a number of things. We're going to be talking a little bit about Oakland. We're going to be talking a little bit about the state of Native activism. We're going to be talking a little bit about direct action and many other things. And joining us for this conversation is Marty Aranaydo. Aranaydo, I'm sorry. I was trying to read it too literally on my script. Marty is a longtime friend of mine. He's an artist, a DJ, an organizer, and a direct action trainer. He is a Native Oakland Native who's been defending Mother Earth and her people since he was 13. He's old now and has lots of stories, which we're going to talk about today. Marty, welcome to the Green and Red podcast.
Thank you, Green and Red podcast. Great.
Yeah, we're just like a nice little quaint kind of little boutique podcast where we like to talk about this stuff.
Maybe for my laundry machine, which sounds like it's about to get launched into space.
Sounds good. Sounds good on this end. Maybe you're a native of Oakland and you've been working in the direct action world since you were a preteen, early teen. Maybe just spend a little bit of time to briefly tell us about some of your background.
Okay. I'm actually an Alcatraz baby, meaning that my parents met because of the Alcatraz occupation. My aunt, Linda Aranaydo, whose name is in the books, as one of the first 14 people that founded the occupation itself. And actually, it started on its second try. The first try was a miserable failure. And it's a different story. My mom hitchhiked when she was 16 to come participate in the occupation with her best friend, Lola. Her and Lola made it to San Francisco, somehow got a boat ride to the island, and were on the island for quite some time. And then my dad didn't trust everybody on the island. Everybody. He trusted a lot of people, not everybody. And so he did support from the mainland, and eventually met my mother at the Indian Center on Valencia Street in San Francisco on the rooftop. And he told her, I'm not leaving this rooftop till I get a kiss. And she said, I guess you're going to die up here. But something happened and they both came down off the roof, and the rest is history. So born of action, so to speak. I never really thought about it like that until recently, retelling where I come from. And it's a trip that I fell into it on my own, actually, because after the occupation, my parents got into building community and doing education for Indian people in Oakland specifically, and in the greater Bay Area. But that was their task. And there was a lot of things were happening after Alcatraz. A lot of momentum was built. A lot of consciousness opened up for our people, but for everybody, I think, after that. And people started going different directions after that. One of my dad's best friends, Billy Wapipaw, wanted to go international and talk about treaty rights internationally, since we're all individual nations, and started the International Indian Treaty Council, and wanted my dad to go with him. They were good friends and had spent a lot of time working together, organizing, drinking together, theorizing like people do, and going to jazz shows and things. They were good friends, and he wanted my dad to go with him and have his back. And my dad was like, no, we need to stay and build community. Now that we have all these people organized in the Bay Area, we need to take care of the youth, the next generation, and build that. And they disagreed on it. And he saw it as Bill wanted to go and do the kind of rock star treatment, because Bill is an impressive human being, a large human, extremely well spoken, and a genius in his own right. And my dad wanted to stay home and do education, do community building, which he did. And consequently, they split. They did their two different paths, but both of them are incredible and still have effect to this day. But so I definitely wasn't necessarily encouraged, but through youth organizing around issues that are affecting Oakland people, police brutality, curfews, and dumb shit like that the city tries to impose on its young people. I found my way into helping out. At first, it was just, I got you. I'll paint a banner. You know what I mean? That's what I do. I do graffiti. So I'll paint you a banner. And then the messages started coming back and they were like paragraphs and shit. And I was like, that's not gonna work. It's too much words for a banner. And I start sending back messages and coming up with better messages. And so they're like, this is great, but we have to have a meeting about it. You should come to a meeting. And I was like, no, I don't really want to go to no meetings. I'm a 13-year-old kind of wildling out there in the world doing my thing. And yeah, so they were like, go to this meeting. So I started going to meetings and figured out that the more that I contributed, the better those messages got. And so I don't know, I got in through the painting door or the art door to youth organizing in the Bay. And for a long time, just did that. And when I had a chance to work with Indian people, a friend of mine, Lisa Garrett and Heather, they basically were like, we're working with IEN and working with their youth program. You've done organizer training. By that time, I'd done a lot of organizer training and political education. And they were like, all these Indian youth that we're working with we're national, and these kids need to know what you know. They're like organizing 101 and the political education pieces around strategy and things. And so I was like, working with Indians, like around the country? Yep, I'm in, let's go. So like jump ship. I was a student at Berkeley at the time, studying everything from environmental design to film and Native American studies. So I was ready to go, man. And I was like, I can stay here and write about Indians, or I can go work with Indians and support their work. Yeah. I want to be with my people. Let's go. So I jumped and ran. Don't do that.
You're a direct action organizer and a direct action trainer. Was there any particular moment, besides being born into it, was there any particular moment where you made any kind of shift from art and organizing to more of a focus on direct action?
Yeah. So I cut my teeth I did Union Summer 1 year when I was a kid, the AFL-CIO's organizer training thing, and saw the effectiveness of direct action. I'd been to Seattle in '99 with a contingent of young people of color that went to Seattle for the WTO shutdown and participated in all kinds of things running in the streets for about a week, which was incredible. And I saw the banner hang happen in Seattle with WTO going one way and democracy going the other way. The one-way signs. You don't see that much anymore, but it used to be everywhere. But that really opened my mind to be like, what if all this organizing, all the conventional processes fail? You have to have some type of leverage. You have to have some type of power and go that way to use people power to get what you want. You know what I mean? You got to do things. And studied civil rights or all types of different action and organized from different communities and seen it in my own community. Like, no one's going to give you anything. You got to power up and take that shit. And that's the way that after that, I saw that IEN was great at getting it to the table and having those discussions and holding people to the fire. But what if they say no?
And just tell our folks what IEN is if they're not familiar with that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Speaking in the ABCs. IEN stands for Indigenous Environmental Network. Friends of ours that have been doing organizing and action with communities for decades. Great work. Fantastic organization. Through the youth program, I was like, saw that all this organizing was happening, but there was no action training. So I was like, where are you guys powering up if they say no? And I didn't. I saw lots of land occupation and holding ceremony in different places, which is super powerful and amazing. But I was like, what about blockades? What about calling people out publicly where they lay? Like, where are these defenses for our people? And I didn't see it. And so that's when I was like, I know some people who do that. And they're based here in Oakland. So I think I'll just drop by the Ruckus Society and see what's going on. And Ruckus was going through a transformation of sorts at the time. Literally, I walked into a meeting where they were discussing, I walked in their office on 15th Street in Oakland and literally caught them during a meeting when they were talking about transforming their approach to food because they're working with Native people. And Native people have a different relationship to food. And before that, they'd been largely vegan and vegetarian and vegan stuff. The starting a painful transformation, like cultural shift from white, crusty, punky activist kids go to working with communities of color. So that cultural shift wasn't easy, but they made it. And so I walked in during one of those discussions, literally was like, hey, I'm working with a bunch of Native people that are organizing, and I would like to talk to you about bringing your style of direct action to our community. Can we start that conversation? And they looked at me like I'd been sent there or some shit. Maybe like the timing couldn't have been better, more awkward. I don't know. But it was one of those things. And I'm an urban Indian. I was born and raised here in Oakland. The communities that I built with really just spent a lot of time supporting their work and doing trainings. Really bonded with those folks and really connected. It felt like I'd met my people. And it couldn't have been a better decision to leave college and go do that. But they were like, great, you do it. And I was like, wait, hold on, we can send anybody. They're like, we're here working on our issues. We can't spare anybody. We need everybody we got. And you're born and raised in Oakland, so you go do this. And so I was tasked with that by people that are now my family to go get it and bring it to the people. And yeah, I was gonna do everything I could to make sure that happened. But direct action, honestly, in those times, didn't really have the best reputation because of the kind of white anarcho punky Greenpeace involved. You know what I mean? They had really tromped through the garden when it came to working with Native people. And it didn't go super, to be honest. And it was clear that we needed the skill. It was clear that people wanted to support it, but there was a lot of translation that needed to happen. And so we sidestepped the translation, learned the skill, and then we brought it to ourselves. But it was really hard to bring up direct action the way that we talk about it. That was like a dirty word if you were talking about direct action back then with the home community, with an organizing, fighting community, because oh no, we've seen that before. That don't go so well. You know what I mean? Or they came and they got a real bad rep for what they did in Alaska or what they did in traditionally with communities that traditionally harvest. So it was like people were well aware of the track record of your green organizations. And yeah, it was a contentious thing to bring up. But we waded through it and we talked through it. And fortunately, I had some great teachers at the Record Society that were very patient and understanding. And yeah, worked with some. And I had to, in order to learn it, I had to do it. So I had to go and support other communities, whether they're Native or not, or Tibetan freedom, or whatever we're talking about. I was jumping into everything I could to support the work, but also like to learn it. And through those relationships, a lot of those ties are still strong, and it's pretty amazing to see.
You answered the question I was going to ask you, which was about that relationship where you have Indigenous rights groups, which are also dealing with the environment. They're intertwined, but then you have a more not mainstream, but an environmental movement that's predominantly white, the way you described it. Like, how did you finally come around to reach and work together? And
it was clear that we just needed support. A lot of times we don't have the resources, and these communities don't have the resources that green environmental groups have.
Sure.
And when we say green, we mean white. Let's be frank. So we had to start going to camps. We had to start sending our teams to Greenpeace camps to work with Rainforest Action Network, like sending people to support actions from other communities. We had a series of internships where folks would come and stay in the Bay and support local work that was happening, because there was always something jumping off in the Bay, whether it was a union thing or it was an environmental thing, or we're going after a polluter, or we're going after police brutality. There's no shortage of issues happening here in the Bay. And so through that work, I think having a lot of frank conversations and meetings during camps definitely happened. I don't know, Scotty, if you're in any of those meetings, but yeah.
Camps, conferences, lots of one-on-ones, phone calls, text back and forth, lots of it.
Yeah, lots of pushing and encourage. Honestly, we want to feel good about going to these spaces that aren't Native, because we can have our own camps all day, but if we want more experience, we want people to become known by different action teams and know that they can call on us to support your action, to be a climber, to be action support, to be an action coordinator. Like, you need experience to take those things on. This is life and death. This is bodily harm. We're talking about the potential for it is great. People's abilities need to be, people need to get that experience in order to be able to teach it, let alone do it for our communities.
I think there's an important piece here too, which is that a lot of these big white green groups, it's around the issues, right? So they're real focused on fighting coal because of the climate impacts. But then Native folks and lots of other frontline communities around just North America, let alone the world, are suffering the effects of the extraction of it, or whatever stage it's at in the death cycle. And I think an important thing that I saw in the last 15 or 20 years is the Native groups and Native activists pushing and pushing within these institutions around those issues. If you're going to talk about coal, let's talk about coal in my community, that sort of thing. And I'm wondering, and you had some experience as being part of that, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that as well.
Green groups, I think it goes back to this discussion we had once. I was in Alaska with Native movement folks, and we're having a conversation like, am I an activist? What does that mean? What does that mean? You know what I mean? During some downtime. And like, hey, are you an activist? And I'm like, yeah, I do stuff, but I really just am trying to live by the code that my ancestors gave me. We just want to be Indians and be left the fuck alone. There are people that happen to get in our way. So if there are people getting in the way, if you want to live by the teachings of your ancestors, you have to defend Mother Earth. There's no other way about that. It's impossible to do that and not notice your land, your water, your way of life is determined by these things. You know what I mean? And those are things that are under direct attack. You know, we're talking about dams and salmon, or we're talking about uranium mining, coal mining, and all these extraction things like that.
We're always happy to talk about uranium extraction on the Green Red podcast.
So that, I don't know, like we have become the canary in the cage for it. And if people just skip past the human cost of the thing, it doesn't really make any sense. And how are you going to have this $1 million, whatever, spending tons of money on this campaign, and you're not even involving people that are on the front line that have been working on this issue since it started, right? Or they're talking about climate change. Native people are the first people to notice fucking climate change because we're so connected to the land and its move and its creatures that make moves based on climate, the impacts of which are terrifying. But back to the question of, am I an activist? No, I don't think so. I'm a defender of my people. You know what I mean? I want to live how I'm supposed to live as a Native person. In order to do that, we have to fight. We have to fight. An activist is, are you active or are you inactive? Are you going to be a lawyer? Or are you going to be a doctor? You can be any of these things, but you can choose. White people have the capacity or like the privilege of being able to choose whether they fight or not. Whereas like, why is it the traditional people always are the ones to line up and put their bodies in the way? And so like, if we're talking about, if these green groups believe in equity, what are we talking about? Right? We're going to be there regardless. We're going to show up. We're going to hitchhike. We're going to find a way to get there. And Standing Rock was a great example of that. People came from, I don't know how the fuck all those people got there. It was crazy. Everybody had their own unique fucking wild ass story about how they got there. But they got there and they're going to be in the way. If a green group has all these campaigns and all these funds allocated for that fight, why aren't you sharing it? Why aren't you letting people who are on the front line lead, actually? And I think that is the layers of white supremacy that live within our communities, or within, if you're raised in America, you have those tendencies. You know what I mean? Just like any ism, we all are on a power side and an oppressed side of those things. And I just don't, and a lot of times it's frustrating because we just feel the urgency so much. Our people in Native communities feel that urgency, and we don't have time sit and deliberate over it, or you know what I mean? It's game time. Like, where's it at? You know what I mean? Are you with me or not? If not, fuck it, let's go. We're going anyway. And that's, the Scotian mentality is like, whatever we got is what we got, and we're going. Let's go then.
I have a question that's connected, but a little bit of a shift. I want to see if Bob had any other questions on this.
No, go ahead.
My question is talking about Native folks are often the first environmental defenders because they feel very connected to the land. But then we have in Oakland, for example, a fairly like sizable Native community with a rich history. And I'm wondering within like the sort of more urban Native community, how I because I know people in that community, I can see that there's a connection and that it's not been lost. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how when a couple of generations out from being more in a rural area or tied to the land somewhere, how that has changed or evolved.
Yeah, you don't stop.
I'm also have a question about just the rich history of urban natives in Oakland and the Bay Area too, but you've already touched on some of that, but I just want to hit that first part.
You don't stop being Indian because you're walking on concrete and riding. Yeah. You still, I don't know, you still have the same teachings, you still have the same compass that points you in that direction. What there is left to defend, we need to defend. That's just what needs to happen. And it's a trip. It's just, I don't know. We are nature, right? You look at animals that exist in the city, they just find a way. We do that. It's what we do, but we do it well. You know what I mean? We adapt and we keep it moving. Like, it doesn't stop. And you give as much as you can while you can. And I look at people like my aunt, Linda, who's one of the first 14, but she was an educator and taught at the first Native school in Oakland, Hint Hill Child Development Center. And thousands of Indian kids went through that school, and she got it going, kept it moving, and then decided she wanted to go become a doctor at 40 something. So she becomes a doctor, and then what's the greatest way that she can help? She saw that there was a bottleneck in administration, so we needed Native medical administrators. So she went and figured out how to run a hospital. And so she just kept it moving and kept going. And the need is always to serve the people. That's what do the people need? And that never changes for us. The needs of the people are take care of the land, take care of the people, and our resources. We need those. If you're trying to pull them out of the ground, they need to stay in the ground. You know what I mean? You need to not fuck with us. And that's the thing, man. We just want to be Indian, be left the fuck alone. That's, I don't know, my urgency in terms of organizing action training. Like, I want to win and go the fuck home. I don't want to sit here. I'm not here to fight. I'm not put on this earth to fight forever. I want to enjoy life. I want to go to ceremony. I want to do that without interruption. And in some communities, it's been so dire that hasn't been able to happen, or adaptations had to be made that are shockingly like horror movie level of shock and awe around that. Like, people having to go buy salmon to have ceremony versus catch it in the clan. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I don't know if people who aren't ceremonial or non-native will understand that, but like that, like hearing about that, like really lit a fire under my ass to like, all right, we got to win this shit like yesterday. And the Klamath is flowing now. Like, people saw the horrors and did something about it, organized, took the lessons, made the messages, kicked ass, and tipped it over. It took a long fucking time. We had an agreement in principle I don't know, I was walking downtown when I got the phone call. We had an agreement in principle. Soon after, we went to Warren Buffett's AGM. And that was like 15 years before the dams actually got the resolution passed so that they could actually take them down. That is the type of work and commitment that it takes. And that community is incredible. I don't know, man. That shit needs to be celebrated, documented, analyzed, and repeated over and over and over and over again. There's always a fire burning somewhere. And get to a training.
Yeah.
Support Native leadership, support elders leading. And it's always elders and young people who call it out and get it moving. When you see that happen, fall in line, support them people. Like, get it popping. Yeah, incredible.
No, this is not an area at which I'm an expert, but it seemed to me like Standing Rock was a pivotal event in both of these issues, right? Indigenous rights and the environment. And just wondered if you saw that as a catalyst to get more people involved. What do you think the impact of that was going forward?
Yeah, I think there are definitely moments where things catch fire and take off and have a life of their own. Yeah, Standing Rock was definitely one of those things. I think with my modest observations, I saw things start to change before that. People warm up to the idea of direct action, show up to trainings. I don't know, man. We did so many trainings whenever we could for years with the Indigenous Peoples Power Project, IP3. But yeah, an incredible group of folks. They're just dedicated to putting it out there to try and support communities that need it. And based in this whole idea of intertribal solidarity where, tribes supporting tribes, because if what you're going through, it's gonna come from me too. And if we don't push together, it might get us all. That commitment and people showing up for each other started a long fucking time ago. It probably started at Alcatraz. You know what I mean? And even before that, when it's open season on Indian people. In some ways, it's still open season on Indian people. Let's not to go super dark, but it's one of those things. The fight around Mauna Kea really got things moving in that way. And I think using social media as a communication tool, I think took off and simultaneously took off and caused problems. Also, I think there's a way that is emerging for people to do that with accountability and to support things. I think.
And just for the audience, the Indigenous Peoples Project, maybe talk a little bit about what that is. And you've referenced a couple of different campaigns, which I believe IP3, it's the acronym for it, has been part of the Klamath Dam campaign and Mauna Kea and Standing Rock. But just so for folks to have a little bit of an understanding of what IP3 is.
Yeah, IP3, the Indigenous Peoples Power Project. And where do I start? It's a Native direct action strategy and support network. It was a project of the Ruckus Society and is now out on its own. Yeah, it does direct action training, action support, and strategy for Native communities that are fighting to protect their people and our way of life. And like I said, it's based in intertribal solidarity, people showing up for each other across different geographic separations, tribal communities. But it's generally traditional people that want to continue living as our ancestors have and keep it moving. But like I said, if you want to be in these days and live by the old ways, then you got to fight also. You got to protect what we have left. Otherwise, they're coming for it. And they will always keep coming. So that's the thing. Keep making little Indian children and keep teaching them. And we'll keep fighting. But yeah, the IP3 came out of the Ruckus Society, like I said, around 2005. I'm not sure. Been around for a minute, but doing well and still out there training folks, doing education, training, political ed, and kicking ass.
Awesome. And just like a little bit of a shift in question, but a little bit tied to Standing Rock, is it seems land back has become a much more popular notion, much more popular phrase. And I see it a lot more. I see it in like popular culture. I see it on reservation dogs and things like that. And it seems like particularly after Standing Rock, I don't know if there's a connection there, but I started hearing a lot more about it after Standing Rock. And I'm wondering if you could actually talk a little bit about the land back movement and some of the impact and maybe what sparked it. If I assume it's been around for decades, if not centuries, but it seems like it's been or a re-spark that we've seen in the last decade or so.
Yeah, like I said, man, it is just
Plus it's in your background and on your sweatshirt.
yeah, it's constantly on our minds. It's like being a colonized people, in the end, what do we want? What's the ultimate goal? If we're right now we're fighting for water rights. Right now we're fighting to protect, land from extraction. But in the end, what do folks actually want? And we want our fucking land back. We want this whole country back. The practicality of that and the actual doings of that are complicated, but organizations like NDN have actually probably gotten over 1 million acres back. Like, no shit. Like, it's actually happening. Now, it's not like this mythical thing that's not happening, but one way or another, land is coming back to people. And it's something that, to my knowledge, I'm no authority. I don't know for sure. I'm just going to start by saying that. But from what I've seen, yeah, what I saw or what I've seen to the best of my ability, I think land back started online. Like somebody was doing memes and just, what do you want? We just want our land back. You know what I mean? And that just makes so much sense. And across the board, every Native person is automatically on board. And if you're not, then you're need to go decolonize over there for a while before you come around here again. You know what I mean? It's written on the hearts of every Indian person, every baby that's around. I don't know. I painted this piece behind me, Action Warehouse, designed by Willie White at NDN Collective. Yeah, they gave me this hoodie and I thought it was sick. We hung a banner. Oh yeah, in 2022 on the 4th of July, hung a inverted flag banner with land back written across it from the tallest building in Rapid City, which is the heart of Cowboys and Indian country. And it had the current number of boarding school mass grave bodies that they had found written on the bottom. And it was important to challenge the celebrating of America in Rapid City, which is just down the road from Mount Rushmore, this abhorrent sculpture, this government-sponsored act of fucking vandalism on a sacred spot in the Black Hills, which are sacred and unceded stolen land that is going to come back to the people, mark my fucking words. Like the people there are going to get that back. It's going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see what happens to Mount Rushmore. But yeah, that movement had taken off and then really taken root during the time of Standing Rock. It was a hashtag living on land, living online and popping up during Columbus Day. All the memes that pop up. I don't know if you guys are a fan of Native memes, but they're out there and they make me laugh. There are lots of truth to them. Around Thanksgiving, you can expect to see a big bump in those. Yeah, City of Berkeley and Segurite pushing that over and getting land back. It's happening. It's already, an incredible work is happening across Indian country. And people are really doing it to it, making it happen. It's incredible.
How have you seen it really take root in Indian country? Like I said, it's definitely all over the place as far as like popular culture goes. I see like Native organizations have it as part of a program. It's even just things at the beginning of a meeting where there's a land acknowledgement or something like that. And is that widespread through Indian country?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that, I don't know, it's high time in this amplified kind of stressful, contentious era that we live in. I think land back is also a cure for all these things that are fucking up our communities.
Right.
All the different forms of abuse and things like that. If we had land, a lot of the social ills that affect our people that we get blamed for, we get victim blamed for and gaslit for, are actually effects of colonization, right? So if you want to fix that, give us our fucking land back. It's like we have what we need, and we can create what we need to create, and we can live how we want to live. Then it'll be better. But there's this point. What's good for Native people is good for the world. What's good for Indigenous people is good for the world. What's good for us, what we need back, we need our land back. We need to stop extracting shit. We need you to stop producing oil and gas. We want you to stop running pipelines dangerously close to water. What's good for us is good for everybody. We're not just self-serving here. We're just shouldering the load for everybody else when it comes to fighting for this shit. Mm-hmm. And it's high time that people get behind and support us, have our back, show up for us in whatever way you can, because what's good for us is good for everyone. Even for our adversaries, for those cops holding automatic weapons and standing around, we're there to protect their water too, and their kids' water. Like, we may seem like adversaries, but we are not. We're on the same side of this shit. And we're going to bat for you, even though you got a shitty job.
We're all aware of how the state conducts surveillance and infiltrates groups. And you just mentioned the massive kind of militarized police presence at Standing Rock. I'm just wondering how kind of your interactions with those kind of authorities, those forces of the state, has that been problematic over the years?
To say the least. It's definitely been problematic.
Kind of a setup question, yeah.
So. Yeah. Thanks for that. The LRAD, experimental weapon used on people in Standing Rock. And people laughed it off at first. They were like, if you don't move back, we'll use the sound again. And everybody went, started laughing, looked at each other, were like, ooh, the sound. But we don't know what the effects of that shit are. People had a bunch of weird sicknesses and organ problems after Standing Rock, whether that was from eating shittily or what. After people left, it has weird effects on people, and it remains to be seen. Yeah, I'm waiting for that class action suit if it ever pops up. But yeah, like I said, we're fighting for these idiots too. The fucking cop put his knee in my back and wrestled me to the ground and put the cuffs on me. Or the motherfucker that rode on my arm while I was in a dog cage. Yeah, put a number on my arm. Like, I'm fighting for that fool's water too. Are you fucking kidding me? Our friends in Atlanta are facing crazy repression. Like, the air in Atlanta fucking tastes different. There's this feeling of being watched constantly. And you're being monitored, and you know that it's crazy. People need to adjust, because while the pandemic happened, they were busy training and learning how to suppress movements from probably the fucking IDF that's going to be training cops at Cop City. You know what I mean? Fuck. What the fuck? Like, why are you training our police force that we fucking pay for to repress our American citizens like this? Just I don't even want to say God-given, but our right to protest is, yeah, you can protest all you want, but you know what I mean? We're going to violate your civil rights 10 ways a Sunday while you do it. Not a good feeling. Very fucking creepy, and does make put people on edge that need to work together, that don't know each other. That is an issue. Folks need to address how to move in those spaces, right? Because we still need to do the work. We ain't going home. You know what I mean? People still got to fight it. And folks need to take some time to figure out how to do that. Step out for a second, get some rest, eat some good food, and figure out how to work around these things. The of dissent is incredibly, people getting huge charges, like mountainous charges, for doing the work that any civil rights activist in their time would have been doing is incredibly wrong.
And it seems like the state is also like focusing in. We start seeing the increase of anti-protest pipeline protest laws in like places like South Dakota after Standing Rock. And we start seeing the, criminalization of doing things like blocking traffic after the uprising around the George Floyd murder. And it seems like it's very focused in on movements of color, these moments that are centered around Native people fighting back or Black people fighting back. And it's when it's nice white people holding a sign in front of a supermarket, then it's fine. But when there's like real resistance, or it's from people who the state has this historic relationship with
when
already.
It's effective resistance.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
And may the sun shine on everyone who creates these fucking problems. Oh my gosh. People, despite it, people keep showing up and keep stepping out. And that I couldn't be more proud of anybody that chooses to put themselves in that situation. That is incredible, and to be celebrated, if not, and supported. And yeah, I think if we dig deep, there should be a way that we can do more to support people that are doing the work. I'm an old dog now, and I'm starting to fall apart a little bit and trying to step back.
Join the club, my brother.
My old man wasn't lying when he was like, "Hey, boy, don't get old. Don't get old." But like I said, I feel like I'm open to sharing anything I know was given to me, and I'm more than willing to share it. Hopefully, I can do that in a way that doesn't piss anybody off.
That's something with like sharing and history and memory and all that sort of stuff. One thing that you and I had talked about in talking about this episode is like institutional memory.
Mm-hmm.
And you had wanted to say a couple of things about that, but just to phrase it as a question is like, how do you, particularly around Indigenous organizing, Native organizing, how do you think institutional memory is important?
Yeah, I think nobody wants to repeat mistakes. No one wants to waste time. Anytime fighting is not waste, rephrase that. But nobody wants to waste time redoing something that already had been known. And gatekeeping knowledge, nah, that can't happen. That serves no one, and it sets people up to make these same mistakes. You know what I mean? And like I said, we ain't got time. Fucking, you ain't got time for shit like that. Hand it over. When we came on the scene, a lot of Native organizations were apprehensive about direct action, and that's legit. You know what I mean? I feel that, and we can talk about that. But I got no defense for is when you want to shut me out or you want to keep me from doing the trainings that we agreed that we were going to do at a certain time. And if you give away my space, if you give away the time that we had slotted, like I can't do anything about that. You know what I mean? You're preventing your young people from getting this training. Like that's happened. And we need to be real about that shit and let that shit slide and get past it. Institutional memory, I think, is a big term for knowing where shit comes from and knowing not out of ego, but like knowing that, oh, okay, this was the lesson. These are communities that experience these things, and we can go talk to them and we can go ask them like how that went and what made that successful or what made that a failure. Why didn't you succeed? And what happened there in that situation? I think those conversations have got to happen, and we have to stay up on the changes as well as what's changing, what's happening in this moment, but also keep one eye on lessons from the past, just so that we don't repeat them and we don't have to go through that learning moment again. We can show up game ready. And I think that happens in training spaces. I think that gets refined by action trainers. Should be getting refined by action trainers. If it's not, you're doing it wrong. But taking those experiences, refining them and explaining them or giving them to people with a good enough roadmap so that they can figure out how to apply it to themselves and to their community and to their fights. Adaptations are going to be key, but I think if I've been around for a long time and becoming an old dog, you start to see people not knowing about the organizations they represent. And it's important to know those things, knowing that IP3 was once a part of the Ruckus Society, and they deserve a large bit of respect. And also, if you know that story, then you know that we need each other to support the work that we're doing. We need each other to keep pushing. We're stronger together than we are. And that these painful changes to an organization that was effective, but was doing it wrong in terms of race and culture, made a change. Went from being the White Boy Action Club to being run by women of color at the helm. And the work consequently changed significantly. And the methods really changed. If you know that part of institutional history, that organizations have been doing this work for a long time, have been working together on it. You start to see Greenpeace action training. You start to see them being more folks of color. You start to see it be more queer people, more diverse in ways that they could not imagine in 1997, in 2000, in 2005. Like there, and the training staff totally changed, but large transformation and great work happening. We start seeing communities from different fights show up, not just environmental fights. Incredible work. That took that concerted effort of a lot of people having really difficult conversations and pushing that over. Which if those organizations can change, that they, going forward, that you can work with other people. You don't have to walk into that alone. And how to work with allies. You can talk to folks that were there and that had those tough conversations, that were speaking for you before you even came into this thing. You know what I mean? And trying to create a space, this space that you can walk in now. Yeah. That's pretty amazing work. And
I think it's been an important sort of seeding of things, like starting, these organizations started doing this work 20-something years ago. And it's been an important seeding of things that has led to the direction of things when we've seen some of these like movement moments, like whether it's Occupy Wall Street or the Ferguson Uprising or Standing Rock or 2020 or what have you. And I think some of those hard conversations and transformational moments have been like important for where things went subsequently.
I want IP3 to remember that after Katrina, when they were coming for the public housing and trying to tear down the public housing to get rid of Black New Orleans, really, when they were trying to get rid of folks in the projects, support was asked for by the Ruckus Society. And the Ruckus Society sent an all-Native team to go support that. Yeah. And we showed up ready to help. There was an open call put to everybody to go down for spring break. And they were like, all these privileged college kids are going to show up. What are we going to do with them? You know what I mean? And Ruckus has done convergence and mass mobilization work before. And we had a good experienced team, but we sent an IP3 team in New Orleans to do that work and to work with that community of folks, like the home team and all the fun-loving college kids that showed up and we got them trained up, got them arrested. Like, you work with what you got. It was work all day, kick it at night, go back to work bright and early. Good times, stuff that I probably not trying to do. But yeah, institutional memory is important for shit like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I forgot to even bring up Katrina as a movement moment, which is saying something about my memory because we've done a couple shows on it. Plus, a lot of my friends were there. We're moving towards the end of our time. I have one more question. Bob, do you have one last question?
Yeah, since you mentioned the IDF a minute ago with regard to the training they provide for, a lot of paramilitary forces in the U.S. Right now, what we're seeing in Israel, right, is introducing a lot of people to concepts like Southern colonialism and ethnic cleansing and land theft, which a lot of people, and I'm a teacher and I've done this, the way to explain it is to actually talk about the history of Indigenous people in the United States and how this happened to them. I just wonder if you're seeing an opening with this. A lot of people are talking to you and seeing kind of a momentum there because people are finally talking about these things and how you can take it and also place it within the context of what's happened here in the U.S. for centuries.
Yeah. Friends at Indian Collective actually have up with a document, like a paper about the parallels and the need to support Indigenous organizing in Palestine. Yeah, incredible moment that we're in. The way that military forces there, the colonial military forces there talk about, and I remember hearing this like years ago, the way they talk about it is like cowboys and Indians. They use the same language. of being off reservation, of talking about the natives, and it's something that Palestinians have tried to use to gain support and solidarity work in this country. I'm not, people have put it very eloquently, and I'm not that person. There is, I think, Native people across, like I'm starting to see Free Palestine banners in on the Navajo Nation. People are posting solidarity work and artwork from every corner of Indian country. You ain't got to tell us. Like we see what's happening. We know what's up, and we've been supportive for a long time. And the work is it's right there. It's really apparent. Yeah, folks have been throwing in whatever ways they can at this time. Collective has done a lot of work in support of it. Our friends over there. Yeah, one of the climbers that was actually on that land back banner hang that we did in Rapid City on July 4th in 2022 was actually a Palestinian woman. And yeah, really had my back on that and kick ass, man. Like we've been fighting side by side for a while now. And it's a fantastic moment for people to really take a look around and really understand where land back comes from. When you say land back, when it comes to Palestine, you start to get it if you don't know already. It's really apparent. Everything that affects the people, so goes the land, so go the people. And what we're seeing there is abhorrent. And talk about land back. That's it right there. People need their land back. And colonial forces be damned. Yeah, I was at a vintage shopping for my clothing line shit, and I found a fucking IDF t-shirt and I was like, what the fuck? This is crazy. This was on the back of one of these motherfuckers, man. So I was in Oakland. Yeah. I got downtown Salvation Army, and I was like, holy shit. Somebody did one of those free trip to Israel things and got their IDF t-shirt. And then somehow it ended up at Salvation Army. But it was tripped. It was like holding an artifact of a war artifact. Like, yeah. That was a trip, man. I picked it up just to be like, I gotta give this to somebody for an art project or some shit. I don't know. But yeah, it's crazy, man.
Speaking about art, my last question's around that. You're a DJ, you're an artist, you're a trainer and a direct action organizer. How, and you've talked a little bit about this with how some of your entree into this was doing art, but like how have over the years you've seen those different like roles or paths or whatever sort of merge and diverge and et cetera?
I love the way that art is less art to be frank, art used to be a fucking afterthought to an action. It'd be the last thing you talk about. And you would throw it to your art team or people that are artists, people like me and Hannah and Cy. They would throw it to us last minute with shitty message, paragraph long, and be like, okay, we need this by tomorrow night. And I'm like, what? And let art lead. Like, think about your action backwards. Start from art and work your way back. You're going to come up with some really good messages. You're going to figure out who you need there. You're going to figure out how to organize your shit. But it's clear to me, because I've worked at every stage of the process, and it's clear to me that if you start with art, you're going to be all right. And ultimately, that's what you're sacrificing or you're putting on the line. You're betting that your bodily safety and your time and your freedom are going into this. You want to go into that with the fucking shitty banner with a bad message?
That's actually a really good point, is that
people want to do that shit all the fucking time.
You want people to risk their lives, but then you also don't want to have
badass shit with a message I can't read or understand or don't make no sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I used to do this test where I would think about if my Uncle Bobby, who's developmentally different, were to read my message, would he understand why I'm there? You know what I mean? And then there was another time a friend of ours was in a diner, and they were like, man, that action y'all did was badass. And I was like, yeah, you wasn't even there. What the fuck? How do you know? He was like, I was in a diner, and I heard this Indian family talking. And they were like, do you see that march go through Flagstaff? And they were like, yeah, I did. That was crazy. He says, what was that about? And they were like, oh, you know what? I don't know. But the banner said, what was it? I'm trying to remember the shit now. Look, I'm old. Oh, protect sacred sites, defend human rights. And it had Turtle Island in it. Yeah, I guess that's what it was about, protecting sacred. And I was like, boom, we won. That's it. You know, if you start with art, that shit's gonna be all right. And like that banner itself, man, I was banging my head against the wall for a long fucking time trying to come up with that. But when it hit, I was like, cool. I work with spray paint. That shit is hella quick when you do all your prep work and you're ready to go. Mm-hmm. Boom, hit it. It's still wet. It dries fast. You got to give it like 15 minutes, but rolled it up, put it on poles, took it to the front line. There you go. And but yeah, the art and the work that David Solnit's doing, incredible stuff. People got their method down, and folks at IP3, other folks that are doing great work when it comes to art and action, or we call it, I forget who taught me this. It might have been Sellers, the first person that mentioned it to me, but everything comes down to a couple things: good communication and creative problem solving. And that to me is everything that art is. You got to find a way to communicate effectively, and you want to do it as dope as possible. And it's a job. And people have figured out different tools and how to set up shop like in a fucking heartbeat. Yeah, folks that can't show up day of, go make some art. And oh, I'm not an artist. Nah, can you color within the lines? If you can do that, you can help. Or there's plenty of other things you can do to help. You can make sure people got food. You can make sure people got snacks. Snacks are important. There's ways that you can weigh in and help that aren't necessarily, you ain't got to be an artiste. It's a craft at that point. And people got it down and are making dope shit like really quickly too. And you got to love folks like that are doing that and go learn it and take it home. Do it at home.
I'm gonna leave it there. If you like what you're hearing, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. Give us a rate and review on the audio platforms. And if you really like us, check us out at greenandredpodcast.org and hit that support button or become a patron at patreon.com/greenredpodcast. And everybody out there, make a lot of trouble and misbehave. Marty, it's been good talking to you, and probably talk to you again soon. And everyone else out there, take care.